Hey, what it do, everybody? Nobody's online, but I don't wait for that because I'm not big yet anyway. So I just come on and speak to myself, right? And whoever joins, joins. And of course, this will end up on my YouTube as well. I haven't done a live for a while. Um, a few weeks ago, I was saying that I was going to do a live about the topic that I'm going to do now. I want to discuss enemies, okay? And I'm going to start from the out and then I'm going to move in, okay? And I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist. I didn't go to school for this. My degree is relatively useless in the elite world, at least. I studied communications and liberal arts, and I only added in liberal arts because my communications professors were idiots at university. They had no idea about the real world. So I don't have credentials in discussing these psychological matters, but I study. I was a smart kid when I was a kid, right? Naturally, it wasn't from studying. I just did well in school. And as an adult, I have gone from a very uncultured life to a very cultured life. And, a lot of people see me talk about black issue, this, that, but I've been around multiple Latinos and essentially every ethnic group you can imagine. Um, I've had experiences with many, and I've learned these things that are happening between people. But what's up, Kino? Shout out Uganda. Um, I don't just speak from only what I've experienced, I also research. All right. However, very important. Some people see a white guy talking and they think, oh, he's talking about what he read on the internet. And that's why I emphasize the fact that I have lived a very cultured life, a very diverse life. And the conversations that I'm starting to bring to the internet, I've been having these conversations with people behind closed doors for 15, 20, 25 years. I'm 36 years old, okay? And growing up in a small, boring ass white town, we didn't have a lot to do, man. Try to find a girl to hook up with when we were young, before we were even having sex, just trying to find a girl, trying alcohol, trying a drug, trying to play guitar, trying to jam on a guitar, and make little songs. And aside from all that, what we did is we had conversations. We talked about our trauma. Yes, white people have trauma. Yes, we have stories to tell. Yes, we have pain. Um, no, we don't all descend from slave lineage and ownership institutions. So therefore, we're not sitting on a big bag of money and just living the good life. The birds don't chirp in the morning because you're white. It just doesn't work that way. So me and my friends, there was a circle of us, men, right? Young men, young white men. Um, in and out over the years, there might have been a Mexican man and there might have been a black guy, but we were mostly white guys because it was a mostly white town. Sorry, but it is what it is. That's where we were born. And the one thing that we all had in common is all of us, except maybe one, had a broken home. The same statistical fact that is hurting Black America, lack of home structure. Right? I was born without a father. I found my father's name. In 2016? Okay, this is 2022. 6 years ago, I learned my last name. So my friends and I, um, those of us who were really open, we would sit and we would talk about our traumas. We would talk about our struggles with God, um, our struggles of identity. For some of us, not me, thank God that I dodged this bullet, but for some of them, it was the struggles with addiction. For me, it was struggles with depression and anxiety and thinking of suicide. Hey, saying this stuff on the internet's crazy, but I'm 36 and I've been processing thoughts of suicide for 30 years of my life, right? It's wild. That's a long time to ponder on your death. very long time. And it's cultural too. Like if you look at Japanese samurai culture, I did an interview, part of my Chaser series that I did in Kansas City in 2016. One of my artists that I interview with discussed about in Japanese culture how to contemplate on one's death was the ultimate form of meditation and power. So I keep both sides of the coin in mind because culture is different and people see things differently, right? So let me get moving. The topic I've been wanting to discuss is enemies. Okay, number one. All right. Well, I'm gonna take this into three categories. Number one is the media. Every single week, there's no less than three news stories that creates another imaginary enemy in your mind. Okay, what's been happening, particularly for the last 5 years, very strong. And altogether, I would say for about the last 10 years, it started under Obama, is pushing race narrative. They beat that drum to create this reality in your mind that every white man is your enemy. Every cop is your enemy. All cops aren't even white. But it's like people are pretending that they are. Um, I highly encourage people to just go to YouTube, man. Um, as much as YouTube is censored, for those of us who towing the line, like not stepping over the line of censorship, for those of us that toe the line, and forget me, the white guy, right? If you don't like white, go listen to black people talk, all right? Or go listen to police even talk on YouTube. It's not a white institution, you know? Maybe in America it started that way, but it's evolved into something else. All judges are not white. All lawyers are not white. All police chiefs are not white. There's actually multiple major American cities that have largely black hierarchy. So that's something to think about. My point is the media is constantly, I'm just using the most popular example, this race thing, constantly going to tell you who your enemy is, right? So, another popular example, if I don't wave the LGBTQ flag, then I become a homophobe in the mind of someone who is subscribing to these narratives as if it's a religion. It's a very, very dangerous game. You have to understand this: the media is owned essentially by less than 10 major family names. I'm not going to just throw out exact numbers like it's some kind of definitive thing, because it's a bit fluid and flexible like some people think gender is. You have to understand, when the messengers are limited and the majority of those messengers are pushing to copy and paste messages, they're just rephrasing the headlines. And then in the article, they add a little bit, they take a little bit away, but the essence of the message stays the same. You must consider the messenger. Like, when someone attacks me for my color, but they graduated from a majority white university, and it was majority white professors perhaps that gave them this knowledge, so-called knowledge, to attack regular ass white people like myself. What are you really doing? Okay. And then on the other side, this goes back decades too. There are black elites in America. There's a thing called black boule. They lay low, they pull strings, they fund certain organizations that pimp race. At this point in the Western world, race is being sold back to the people that are upset about race. It's crazy. I've said for a long time that everything is for sale in America, including your soul. You can go to Hollywood and make the most ridiculous comedy to distract the masses, and they'll give you a bunch of money. Especially if you're a racial minority, they love for you to mislead your people. That's what they want. That's what these universities want. It's what the media wants. The media, the universities, the entertainment industry, they are all misleading you. And they are constantly reminding you of who your newest enemy is. Sometimes it's an old drum of race, race, race. And sometimes it's a new drum of political matters, sexual matters, preference matters. It's never ending. And you have to detox yourself from the drunkenness of malicious messaging. That is what is happening. That is what is happening. Period. That is what is happening. Okay, so let's go to the next category of our enemies. I'm going to use personal examples, and these are shitty examples. These are things that I've struggled with for many, many, many years, and I still struggle with coming to terms with these things. So for me, I was born in 1985, and by 1989, hey sis, you just tuned in at a crazy time. By 1989, 1990, 1991, I was sexually abused by a family member more than once. Some of my earliest memories in this life was abuse. So for me, as a 36-year-old man, these things still haunt me. I have PTSD from my own life history, right? Regardless of my blue eyes, regardless of being a white, it doesn't take away my struggle and my pain, or the struggles of my mother, or the struggles of my grandmother, or my granddaddy that died at 41 years old. There's no lineage of greatness and wealth that I was handed off to, right? So, as far as enemies go, at 36 years old, I could continue to make bad decisions and say, well, I was abused as a child, or I didn't have a father as a child, so I'm going to be a piece of shit, and I'm going to take out my anger on everyone else. At the end of the day, I must deal with my experiences within myself. I have to face those experiences, find self-definition, reconciliation, and number one, forgiveness. And again, I'm going to keep going back to the white guy thing. When a white guy says that you have to forgive, people say, oh, that's your white privilege speaking. The fuck? This is an issue happening within many colors of communities where someone cannot forgive. What did gangbanging do for America for 20, 30 years? No one forgave. No one let bygones be bygones. It reminds me of some Irish history that I have researched. So Ireland is a lot like Africa in its history and in its culture. Number one, fun fact. The British wrote literature about Ireland that sounds like, if you didn't know it was Ireland, they were talking about Africans. They considered the people to be barbaric, stupid, drunkards, whores. They didn't know what to do with their land if they didn't have monarchical rule. Okay? Damn, I lost my thought just a little bit. So, how do I run that back? Give me a moment. I'm gonna have to chop this. I'm trying to also like do notes so that I can put all my thoughts together just a little bit better. Okay, so let me just forget that. You have to deal with your personal traumas, and in dealing with your personal traumas, it doesn't work when you constantly project it onto someone else. It doesn't lick the wound inside of you indefinitely. You have to tend to that wound, your absolute self. So that brings me to the third category of enemies. We've heard it for years. Their biggest enemy Your biggest enemy will always be the man or woman in the mirror. Period. Um, we get dealt bad hands. I've been dealt a very, very shitty hand, but Africans were very resourceful and not drunks. That's why there was a scramble for Africa. I agree. There is a lot of resource here, and they looked at Ireland is the same way. They saw a resource there, and Ireland had political conflict all the way up, I think, into the 90s. Like, that's not even old history. That's super, super recent history. My only point of comparing the way the British wrote about Ireland and the way the British have written about Africa is it's the same thing. And it wasn't about color. It was about resource and power and wealth. Land is wealth. That's my entire point. So, and I'll keep replying if you guys got anything, any inputs. I appreciate all inputs. Absolutely. Um, I like to, well, I'm white, right? So of course I have a white perspective. And whenever we study human history and colonization and the big hot topic of slavery, it's not been about color. Gentrification now in modern time is not about color. It's about land, power, resource. A lot of people, and I used to be one of them, thought that slavery was some American thing, and it only happened to some people in West Africa. Of course, in American schools, they just say Africa. They don't say West Africa. They don't say Cameroon, Congo. Congos were going east, a lot of them. Some of them went west. See, when I said east, some people won't know what I'm talking about because we weren't taught about Swahili slave trade. We weren't taught, and this is the big elephant in the room, we weren't taught about the Islamic roles in slavery for well over 1,000 years. 1,000 year plus legacy, like 1,500 year legacy of enslaving anybody that was not Muslim. It didn't matter the color, right? But that goes perfectly in to what we're discussing. The media has constantly pushed this narrative about white, 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 white. And it's interesting, when I was speaking with Mike and Degwa the other day, off camera, we discussed this. I asked him, I said, Mike, you know slave history? He said, yes. I said, of course. So why do the British keep claiming the history? If you go to a BBC documentary about West Africa, they refuse to even mention the Islamic roles in the slave trade there. Some of the richest men ever in Africa were there with slaves, and they were melanated people. They weren't just Muslims. I've been wondering where Kenyan slaves went to because the DNA ancestry in the USA only says that black people come from West Africa. It's a very good question, Bells. As far as what I have studied in the Swahili slave trade, um, I haven't seen America mentioned, but it's a dicey history. And I know that the reason why they want it to be dicey and vague in times is because the Islamic culture is ingrained into African culture. So if we start telling the truth, then there goes the white man narrative. I'm not saying that there wasn't a white role and that there isn't currently a white role, but there's also a melanated role, an Arab role, an Indian role. I know that many of those slaves, they were marched across the Saharan deserts. They were taking the Africans in a ratio of 2 to 1. The 2 was the women, the 1 was the men, which created a shortage of available women in the continent, which does serve a certain history of homosexuality in the continent. But even where there was documented homosexuality, the man still had the greatest desire, as far as the documentation, to have a woman, to have a wife. So it was simply a companionship and sexual matter that was temporary. And then aside from taking people through the Saharan up into these Arab nations, some of the Swahili slaves were taken to India. And there's deep black history, African history in India. I want to dissect this topic like so far, and I would like to bring some people around to interview about it, or we can live stream about it, because this is the elephant in the room, you know, and it's a perfect conversation for this topic of enemies. And I'm not aspiring to create new enemies. I'm trying to level the playing field, as people claim with like Black rights in America. They're always saying, we're trying to level the playing field. Well, I'm getting ready to graduate from university, and I need to take one more semester, perhaps. I'm waiting on my audit. But if they say that I need to take one more semester for graduation, then I have to find money to pay for it, right? So I go to look for scholarships. If I was lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, two-spirit, or plus, I could get a scholarship. If I was Latino, I could get a scholarship. If I was Black, I could get a scholarship. I Googled poor white boy scholarship. Somebody tried to do that somewhere in Europe not long ago, and it was shot down. They said it was discriminatory. What level field are we talking about? Which playing field? Which field? Truly, you know, there has been so much that has helped anybody but white for the last 70 years. And look at where America is now. You know, if you promote by tribalism, if you admit into institutions and universities by tribalism and colorism, does that make the institution stronger, you know, or just more equal? And whenever we even discuss equal, are we going by the percentage of the population? 13% of America is Black American. About 18% is Latino. Asians fit in there somewhere, and then the rest is largely white. Uh, Such a big topic. I hope that maybe um, answered your question a little bit, Bells. But you know, I found my dad through Ancestry.com, and for those that don't know, they're not they're not tracking down your bloodline. They're just taking your spit and matching it with other similar profiles um, that are on the database. And like, I have sickle cell traits, but nothing in my alleged countries of origination, none of them mentioned anything about Africa. It said I had Asian in me, but like when we're talking about Swahili slave trade, maybe that's where the African came in. Maybe one of my descendants was a Swahili slave that got taken to Asia, right? That's why I love Candace Owens. She's for equal rights across all races, period. And I like Candace Owens too. And oh my gosh, the way people talk about her. Um, Let me spin off onto that. One thing that really bothers me very much is we talk about leveling the playing field, lifting up Black voices, freedom of speech, equality. However, in America, when a so-called Black person speaks their beliefs, but they are not liberal beliefs or Democrat Party beliefs, or they are not victimhood beliefs, they get called, I don't think I can even say these words on here, Uncle TOM or COON. And it's disgusting. It's pitiful. And if you look at, let's talk Black history, America, right? When we say Black history, that's not African, that's Black. A lot of people say, hey, you know, Black's an American term. And I agree, Black is an American term. When you look at the history, Black culture in America they had strong family units. leading up to civil rights. It's been since civil rights that it's been dismantled. The family's been dismantled. And it's happening through celebrity. It's happening through university. It's happening through Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson has like 5 races in him. He's a complete cocktail of nationalities, and he's the one in the late 1980s that was trying to convince everybody to call themselves African Americans. And if you call yourself African American, you notice I never say that, because a lot of Black Americans don't consider themselves African. But whenever I'm sure you've been called COON. That's so despicable. Whenever you call yourself African American, it's separating yourself from the soil on which you stand. Huh? And my friend Fran might be sleeping right now. Strong, melanated, Southern voice from America. She gets called COON. People say you must be married to a white man. You know, Fran, like me, we both voted for Obama in 2008, and then we had an awakening. And that's not us saying that we're Republicans either. What we're seeing is the people, the political party that's allegedly for the people is obviously not. Does that mean the other side is for the people? No. But are we going to keep pretending that one of them is for the people? If people don't wake up to these realities, you're shooting yourself in the foot until you bleed out. So let me just cap this off, because I know that I get a little bit rambly. That's why I like it when I can interview instead of just doing these monologues, because it helps to guide the conversation and organize it a little bit better. But number one, your biggest enemy is your damn self, period. Which traumas inside of you are you projecting onto other people? I agree, Bells. My first time coming to Kenya, once I was here, I had a realization. I said, "Oh my God, all of those Americans in America are American. Period." The social programs, the universities, the scholarships for the universities, the HBCU. You know, we don't even get the term historically white university and college. Like, it would be called racist, you know? Americans are American. Like, America's fucked up. People are dying by the thousands, millions, actually, millions every year from a combination of factors. That combination of factors is heart disease from the food, diabetes, cancer, and a host of other preventable diseases. It's all caused by the food, which is FDA approved, CDC endorsed and approved. Suicide ties cancer in America. White men are doing it more than anybody else. Now, here in Africa, there's this false idea that the white man has everything. I was just buying soda outside, and a repeat offender came to me. He walks up to me while I'm talking to the shopkeeper and says, "Give me 600 shillings." I said, "What?" He says, "Give me 600. I said, "Bro, you hit me up with the same thing at the stage a few weeks ago. I'm not going to give you a chicken and 5 avocados because you just told me to. Like, what's wrong with you?" It's crazy. And in America, we're struggling to not blow our damn heads off, you know? And if you watch the whole video, I just talked about, 30 years of my life, I've had this mental and emotional struggle of dealing with thoughts of suicide, you know? What else for America? Gun violence. Well over 1,000 people are shot in Chicago every year. 500, 600, maybe 700. I'm speculating numbers, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. That many people die in Chicago every year. So it's not like America's perfect, but for the love of God, poverty looks different in America. I know there are some people fetching water in America, but that is not common in the culture like 2022 Kenya, 2022 Africa. Fetching water, meaning you have to go get the water somewhere else to bring to your house. Sometimes neighbors come here to fill a couple large jugs of water. And whenever they're doing it, all I'm thinking is, damn, when they take a bucket shower, they're not going to have a lot of water. Like, I'm sick of this narrative of American oppression. I'm tired of it. It's played out. It's a stale drum. It's stale bread. It's rotten fruit. It's not me saying that there's no issues of discrimination or oppression in America. The reality is, this is a global construct of oppression, of fake money, of fake media, of fake enemies. The theme of this vlog is fake enemies, illusionary enemies. If only it were that simple to just blame a person or blame a group of people or blame a color. Like, at what point are people going to learn that your greatest enemy is yourself? You can only blame so many people. Let me try to end this with a story. Unless something comes up, then I'll continue, of course. Some of y'all that follow my YouTube saw me interview with a Black American. I wasn't trying to expose her when I interviewed her. She just did it herself. I asked her regular questions. She grew up with money. Daddy's a military vet, retired. Uh, as she said, these are all her own words, she went to the best school. She went to a great university. She never grew up in racist spaces, but when you check the racial demographics of her suburb, it was 25% black, about 48, maybe 50% white, and then the rest were Asians and Latinos. So I guess she got lucky and none of those people were racist. Um, she said that she never experienced disenfranchised Black people until she went to teach in Atlanta, which that is her claim to being in touch with the ghetto, because she taught in apparently an inner city school. She's obsessed with color. She got a very elite job in Kenya. She got to live in Westlands. Her very fancy apartment was paid for in full by the school. The school also buys you a car after arrival so that you can drive to work. Um, she spent more time in the clubs getting drunk um, than getting in touch with local Kenyans. She isolated herself within an international community bubble of Nairobi, at the same time complaining about the whites, complaining about the Indians, even saying that Indians are not Kenyan. What the hell? Like, you don't know history. Like I was talking about, 10, 15 minutes ago, world history, man. Like, we have to stop having these conversations, chopping each other down at the ankles based on 400 years of history. What about the other 1,500 years? And then the years before those years. What about those years? There's so much history just being neglected for the sake of self-righteousness and hatred and bigotry. And there's no such thing as a reverse racism. It's simply racism, and anyone can practice it. I don't care what anybody tries to tell me about that. Because before it was racism, it was tribalism and colorism. Okay? Religionism. I mean, there's so many damn isms. So back to this lady. Her YouTube has really grown. It's not big, but it's enough to make a living. If she was living in Feta Estates, she'd be living a great life in Kenya just off of YouTube. But she insists on being on the bougie sides of town. And you said boggles my mind that people think you can't be white or Indian and from Africa like white South Africans. But of course, white South Africans, colonizer. Elon Musk is an African American technically, and he just bought Twitter. Like, you know, um, so her channel got big. She hosted a lot of great guests. She hosted me. I had to be very politically correct to be on the channel because if I really spoke my mind, it could have went downhill. And as nice as I was about the things I was saying, people still attacked me in the comments. They called me wet dog. They called me unclean. They called me colonizer. They said I wasn't welcome. Some people would say I should be deported. And that's okay. It's all right. He's white. We want equality, but fuck him. He's white. It's okay. So a lot of great conversations were happening there. But she stayed obsessed with race, complaining about the Indians, complaining about the whites, complaining about the whiteness of her school, claiming that the school was all white staff, all white students. And I watched enough of the interviews to find so many contradictions. If I was a lawyer, it would be done. There's so many contradictions. Now, as the gossip is coming out further, now there's some black kids at the school. Now there's more Kenyans there. But it's not enough. They're a minority. They're a minority. They're a minority. Well, that's the job you applied for. And whether if that job is good or bad, you took the contract. You took the money. You drank the money. You spoiled the money. You traveled on the money. You did black excellence with all that white money. And then curse whiteness. You bit the hand that feeds you. So she was fired. And now she's trying to sue the school for wrongful termination, for racial discrimination. She's comparing her story to a white lady that made a Facebook post in bad taste after being robbed. Everybody knows that here pickpocketing is a thing. Stealing people's bags is a thing. Selling people fake water is a thing. Selling people fake soda is a thing. Selling people fake Airbnb bookings is a thing. You know, this isn't a way of saying that everything is bad, but let's stop pretending that everything is perfect, right? So the lady made a post that was in bad taste. It didn't name color. It basically mentioned the culture of theft, and she was a victim to it. So this black American is comparing herself to the white American, while at the same time very mildly admitting and glossing over her many infractions that she had at her job, showing up late, blaming it on dental surgery, traveling while on a sick note, traveling to America, not just to the next town over. She didn't go to Kiambu. She went all the way to America. Letting people smoke weed on her channel. Being an alcoholic on the channel, and all of this while being a school teacher at an elite school. The reason why I mention her story is because she is her biggest enemy. Period. The same way color, while it can be a factor sometimes in a bad situation, it cannot always be the reason for your struggle. Now, for me, molested as a child, abused as a child, grew up without a father. Those three things cannot always be the reasons for my struggle. Period. Statistically, I should be hooked on drugs. I should be abusing a woman. I should be in prison. I should be dead. I should be uneducated. I should be ignorant. to the world and people. I should lack compassion because my heart should be hardened because of all the struggle I felt. No, it doesn't work that way, man. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. But Matt, where are you getting your information? Back to the beginning of the video. My lived experience. I learned that term from a woke black rapper years ago who refused to let me engage in cultural conversations because I don't have his lived experience, but he didn't have my lived experience. I get it from research. And finally, the people I look up to the most on the internet are black conservative men. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I really, really started experiencing conservative black America. They've been keeping their head low because they don't want to be called a COON or an Uncle TOM, or they don't want to have their cookout invitation revoked. They don't want to have their black card revoked because people are canceling blackness if you don't subscribe to a certain narrative. But people are speaking up because it's important. It's crucial. If you care about black people, that's the hot topic, tell them the truth. Thomas Sowell, let me see if I can think of that quote. I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but it's something like, if you don't want to help someone, tell them what they want to hear. And if you want to help someone, you tell them the truth. It's tough love. That's a father's love. What's a father? Oh, gender, blah, blah. No, that's the problem. That's the problem. Been calling fathers sperm donors and deadbeats for decades now. Taking away their credibility. You know? Calling white people colonizers. My country, my lineage country, where my greats came from, was colonized. Like, what do you want? What do you want? You know? How can you just call me that? That's like me just calling a black person ghetto, or a crackhead, or a gangbanger, or poor, or uneducated. But those are stereotypes. They're racist, and that's not exclusive truth. There's ignorant everybody. Ignorant everybody. Ghetto everybody. There's white gangbangers. Gangbanging started with whites in America. The Italians and the Irish. Gangbanging is just a spin-off of tribalism practiced by the Irish to this day. Oh, I was saying that earlier. If you made it this far, awesome. We keep holding the sins of people's ancestors over their head. In Ireland, some culture that I have read about, like I was saying, they go by clans in Ireland, like in Africa, tribes, like Native American tribes. And they have these fist fights, right, between the clans in Ireland. And these rivalries go back, centuries. I don't know if it's millennia, but it goes back a long, 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 long time. So I'm watching this documentary, and they're asking this one guy from one of the clans, one of the tribes, why do you hate that clan? He didn't know. It was tradition. It was tradition to hate that person. It was tradition to hate that clan. For gangbang in America, it's tradition for one block to hate the other block, for one set to hate the other set. It's becoming tradition to hate whites. It's traditional for some whites to hate blacks. And it's nonsense. When are people going to understand that they're hanging on to fire that is burning them, and they can put some aloe vera on that burn if they'll only throw the fire first? Let go of the fire, man. Understand history well and good. But what about the future? I just created history in my vlog in the last 20 minutes. The future is every second ahead of you. Everybody gets so mad when I talk about the future. God forbid someone talk about taking a step forward. Every time something bad happens with Black America, they say, oh, you just set us back 50 years. Oh, you set us back 100 years. Oh, you set us back 400 years. That's what you're doing every time you disregard the work of a former conservative Black America and embrace these liberalisms that continue to set you back and all the progress that's been found. So at the end of the day, we all sleep. At the end of this life, we all die. We all die. And at some point, you have to see through the smoke of these fake enemies and see yourself. You have to see through the smoke of this fake media, race bait media. White cop, black victim. White cop, black victim. They only name the color when the victim is black. Why? Why is that? Ask yourself, who owns that media house? Why are they writing the headline this way? When you find out who owns the media house, then you ask them, why do they care? Next time you listen to some gangster rap, I've listened to it for years, and when it's about hoeing and pimping and drug dealing, murder, go to Google and say who owns this artist, who has a contract with this artist. And then once you know that answer, the record label, say who owns this record label. Follow that rabbit trail. It'll only take you 10 minutes. And when you get to the end of that trail or the bottom of that rabbit hole, ask yourself, why does this executive own, publish, and endorse this messaging? That is what made me see the light in 2020. The question was, why does this executive own this content? Why do they endorse it? Why do they allow it? Why do they spend millions? Maybe it's billions, I don't know. Why do they spend millions of dollars marketing this message? Why do they spend definitely billions, maybe trillions, of marketing these messages in universities? Is it progression or is it regression? People think they're being progressive. They say they are. It makes them feel good to say they're being progressive. As much as I went from left-leaning to right-leaning, by me having these conversations, I'm definitely being progressive. Progressive doesn't have to mean feminize the men and destroy the home, or victimize my color while calling it excellent. Pick a side. At least pick a side. And once you pick that side and you revel in that side, like I used to do when I was left-leaning, I was reveling in that left side. Eventually, that grass that you're rolling around in is going to taste like shit, and you're going to start having some awakening moments, some realizations, and you'll become truly progressive. You'll find progress in your mind. But beating the drum of these same old tunes, my enemy, that enemy, my enemy, that enemy. You are the enemy. You are the enemy. I'm my own biggest enemy. If I give in to suicidal thoughts one day and I jump off the damn bridge at Donholm Nivus, I beat myself. You know what I'm saying? I was glad for years that in America that I didn't own a gun because I feared what I would have done with it to myself. I am my own biggest enemy. That doesn't mean I don't have outside enemies. Obviously, we live in a tribalist world. We live in a hateful world. Of course we have outside enemies. But how do you respond to those enemies? Do you destroy yourself? Some guy just lit himself on fire in Washington, D.C. on a government property to protest climate change. What? He beat himself. Are you beating yourself? That's the question. Are you beating yourself by constantly looking out, blaming lack of opportunity, but refusing to create your own opportunity? You know? I think that's the biggest problem in this world today, is people keep beating themselves and blaming everybody else for the beating. Of course we have problems in society, but we have a lot of problems inside of ourselves. That's my speech. That's my discussion about enemies. Foreign, domestic, and internal. Internal. So whatever you have to do to find your way, make sure you're seeing straight first. Make sure you can see and understand what's ahead of you. And understanding is a journey. It's not going to just happen because you read a new meme and suddenly everything is clear. It's a process. It's building blocks. It's step by step. Forward, not backwards. One more time, Thomas Sowell. I'm not going to quote it perfectly. But if you want to help yourself, you tell people what they want to hear. And if you want to help the person, you tell them the truth. And finally, in conclusion, I'm pretty sure it was Denzel Washington, another man that I look up to and watch on the internet. He said, don't have a backup plan. If I fail, I want to fall forward. So a lot of people are tripping. They keep falling backwards further and further and further. I do it too. I do it too. You have to look forward. Keep learning history and finding strength in your history. Coming to peace with your history. Coming to terms with your history. Finding forgiveness in history. And move forward so that you won't be your own biggest enemy. Once you sort things with yourself, you can deal with these external forces in a whole different way. It's not about what happens to you. It's about how you react. Sawa sawa. So thanks everybody for watching. I think a lot of people came and went and some stuck around. I really enjoy speaking to people. I love it so much. I love the hard conversations. God, religion, politics, I love it. Race, I love it. Economics, I love it. Food, I love it. So I appreciate everybody. And I'll try to do these more often. I'm going to do an internet upgrade soon. And once I do, I'm going to start doing some streaming interviews with Americans. I don't want you to just listen to the white guy with blue eyes. Maybe it brings you trauma when you see my face. That's what some people say. So I'm going to bring on some other guests, and I'm going to let them give their piece on the things that I'm talking about. All right? So stay tuned. Definitely subscribe to my channel, Matt Diamond Flix. Hit the notification bell, like, comment, share, and try to find some peace and try to find some love. All right? Later.